it time for a change? That's the question I'm asking. Is it time for a change? The Dana White way of doing business has run its course. It did what it did for 25 years. It did what it did, right? We would not be watching MMA at this level if it wasn't for Dana White. So hey, what's going on, fight fans? Hey, this is Coach D, the Wild Man, coming at you again with another episode of Coach D Media. Now, you know I do with Coach D Media. I talk about all things when it comes to combat sports, from the highs to the lows. All right, let's get back into it. All right, it's already out there. Everybody's talking about it. We already know. Daggone, the PFL has just bought and acquired Bellator. So now they required the whole roster, giving them up to, 250, 280, 300 fighters coming all together under the PFL banner. So what does that mean? Okay. That means they could put on a lot more fights, right? They got reach. They got leverage, right? They got opportunities. They got ways to change the game up. All right. And that's what's important, because the question is it time for a change? That's the question I'm asking. Is it time for a change? The Dana White way of doing business has run its course. It did what it did for 25 years. It did what it did, right? We would not be watching MMA at this level if it wasn't for Dana White. So I'm not going to sit here and say, hey, he didn't do nothing. He did a lot for combat sports. Some good, some bad. Good, we had a lot of great champions that we now know are their household names. You name it, a lot of them came out of the UFC. The bad, look how much destruction he has created along the way. He's done his share of shit that has ruined a lot of fighters' careers, right? Now look what all they got going on. They got all this stuff, from legal issues to fighters retiring, not wanting to fight, all this stuff going on. So is the PFL the future of mixed martial arts? That's the question. That's the real question. Is the PFL the future? Donn Davis is a businessman just like Dana White. Now, if I had to go blow for blow, who's the better businessman, we're going to find out down the line. Because Dana White grew when there was no competition. He grew when everybody wasn't on mixed martial arts. He grew when there were factions spread out. We had Pride, we had Risen, we had all these other promotions, but they were spread out. There wasn't a mano competition. And he had the money, through Zuffa to buy up everybody. So he had a legit monopoly on the sport of MMA, right? And for 25 years, he held the reins. Could nobody match him, okay? Now, over 25 years, people have seen the value of getting into combat sports, right? One championship with Chatri, right? Now, Donn Davis with building and growing the PFL, now buying Bellator, right? They understand the value of mixed martial arts, and they're getting into the business of mixed martial arts, right? Donn Davis is a businessman, right? So I don't know if he's really into combat sports, but he understands the value of it, right? Dana White is a fan of combat sports, and he built everything around his knowledge of being a fan, right? He took most of his growth from boxing, most of his outlines, most of his understandings from boxing, right? One of the most corrupt systems when it comes to fighting, it comes from boxing, right? And he's adopted most of those corrupt systems because that's all he really knows is boxing, right? And he adapted it into mixed martial arts and was very successful doing it. We're not even going to say he's not, okay? But now we need the next level of mixed martial arts growth. Can that be Donn Davis? We're going to find out. Will that be one championship in Chaudhry? We're going to find out. Because now we have somebody with the means, the know-how, and the business savvy to actually come at the UFC, right? The reason is not one championship full tilt because they are an Asian brand. They haven't landed in the United States. The PFL and Bellator are American brands that can directly grow in an American base. Now, what Donn Davis is doing different, which is pretty good, right, is he's building international annexes around the world. Because as he said in his interview with Errol Hawani, he had PFL Europe, PFL Middle East, and PFL Africa, which he's developing now, right? He's developing international annexes already where the UFC just went to fight in other countries. And then they came right back to the States. So they took all that, viewership and ticket sales and money and brought it back to the States where PFL is having annexes that are building in those areas. So everything stays there, as an annex to the bigger brand of PFL wherever they're at in the States. Okay, that's pretty daggone smart for the growth of the sport, right? So now you don't have to be a Middle Eastern fighter. You have to hop on a plane and fly to wherever the UFC is going in order to fight. And you're not going to be around your fans. You're not going to be around your family because you're somewhere in the States where now he can fight in his own area where all his family and friends are. And then on a big show, then he flies to the States, or wherever Bellator or PFL is going to be, for the big show. But he can still grow his fan base in his own area, which is great, which is what you want to do, right? And all these areas will be feeder programs to feed the bigger brand, in the States. It all makes sense from a business growth standpoint. The reason why the UFC has reached the ceiling is they never built a system of development from the early starts to now. They always built, you got to get in the UFC as a pro, as a name, as a brand, before, Tough came along and the Contender Series came along, right? Where you got your talent is you just bought out other promotions, right? Which is what PFL did. They bought Bellator and all their roster, which is smart, right? But they're also developing growth programs too, out the gate too. So Donn Davis has a way that can be beneficial. All right. And the PFL and Bellator aren't tarnished brands, right? They're not doing all that foolishness and bullshit that the UFC is doing with Dana White and what he got going on. Sometimes you get tired of that shit. Sometimes you just do, right? Now, granted, as Americans, we like drama. We was raised in it. We was built on it. We recognize it, right? The amount of chaos that happens in the States that we just go, it's just a Tuesday is crazy. Well, a lot of countries consider it, unnecessary, rude, and disrespectful. But for us, it's just another day, right? Look at Sean Strickland. That motherfucker is wild. He's just going all over the place with his mouth. Don't care. Okay? Right? But nobody's stopping him. Nobody's checking him. Right? Either he's going to make it or he's going to get canceled. But as long as he got the belt, as long as he's winning, it's tolerated. Like a Conor McGregor, Kobe Covington, you name it. Yada, yada, yada. Okay? So now fans has options to where they want their viewership and how they want to see fights happen. Right? Now they can go to the PFL and watch the tournament style. Right? Donn Davis said he's going to do eight selective mega fights, which is super fights, right? So now you get to watch how you want a fight to happen. You can get your specialty fights that you want, okay? Which is great, right? got more females coming from Bellator into the PFL. Now we get more female fights. Now you got Cyborg can possibly take on Kayla, which is going to be great. You know what I'm saying? Cyborg can also take on Shields. That's a possibility. So you see these options already creeping in, right? Now fighters have options. When their contracts run out of the UFC, right, they got options, which is what a fighter always wants, is an option. I want to be able to capitalize on my name and my brand and my growth for myself. I don't want to be hamstrung by the UFC to where I can't build my name because I am beholden under contract to just you, where you control my name and my likeness, which is what this lawsuit is all about. Okay, you held my money hostage, you held my name hostage, you held my likeness hostage. People got tired of that shit. Bellator's not doing that. They're giving you freedom to control your own brand with the Bellator style. Now the PFL, you're in a tournament, you got to wear the uniforms and all that kind of good stuff because it's a tournament. It's like any other sport where you got to wear the uniform of the day for the sport that you're in. Okay, but at the end of the day, they understand that you got to get past where we're at. Dana White he just ran his course. We're not saying he don't have a place. He does for a certain style of fighting that we're looking for. But we still have to grow this into a progressive growing sport. It can't reach a ceiling and then it crashes and burns like tends to happen when you don't grow. Dana White didn't have the need to grow. He had a monopoly on everything. His way just worked because there was no competition to challenge what he was doing. But now there's a challenge. Donn Davis has a challenge of what he's building with the PFL and buying and buying the Bellator. He has a way to challenge the UFC and Dana White now. So now it's going to be interesting. Look what's already happened with Francis Ngannou, right? What Jake Paul was doing, right? Dana White has been trying to get on with Zuffa boxing forever. It never happened. How come somebody so big like Dana White couldn't get Zuffa boxing off the ground, right? Because it was the same old shit, right? He was dealing with the same old people. They're like, look, no, we already got this, bruh. We don't need you in this space. But here comes Jake Paul. Jake Paul was able to do it, right? Did it on his own for so many fights, shown that was money to be made, and then he went under the PFL banner. Now look what we got. Francis Ngannou taking on Tyson Fury. Okay? Dana White didn't get it done. He's still stuck in the same one with Conor and Floyd. He ain't do shit else since then. Right? Now, freaking Ngannou may be taking on what's his face? That Wilder. Right? So look what's happening. Right? PFL got the money to offer freaking Nate Diaz $15 million to fight Jake Paul for a second fight. $15 million. So you know what they're going to pay freaking Jake Paul. So now they got the money to pay fighters. Right? They're players now. They're in the effing game. You mean to tell me that's not a threat to the UFC? When you can offer somebody $10 to $15 million to fight, that's not going to be a threat? Really? Really? Right? When you got options now, how you want to fight, where you want to fight, when you want to fight, you got options. Right? If you were a fighter in the Middle East, you can fight in the Middle East. You don't have to necessarily come to the States to fight because the PFL Middle East. If you're in Europe, you want to stay and fight in Europe, you don't want to come to the States, you have PFL Europe. If you want to fight in Africa, PFL Africa. Come on now. Even if it's not done yet, the appeal is there. The appeal is there to go, okay, this is possible, right? And here's why I'm saying it this way. Because like I've always said, if you guys know me, I've been working with Gamma, which they do amateur and youth MMA internationally, which means I've traveled around the world for international competition. So I see the appeal of global competition, right? Dana White is going to the UFC is going to different states to fights, but they're still just primarily UFC fighters. Where you have international competition, you have everybody fighting from everywhere competing. That's an appeal, right? It's a great feeder program. You can see where your next talent is coming from. Okay. because it's international competition where everybody is competing, and the guys who rise to the top. They're not handpicked like with the Tough and the Contender Series where Dana White picks who he wants to compete on his show. International competition, everybody competes together, and the winners get selected. So there's options there. Okay, so it's just, I feel that Dana White's course is just up. He just ran his course. Not knocking it. He's done what he needed to do. And he's made the money that he's needed to make, right? He's not even, he's a president, but he can't call the shots. TKO, management group or whatever they calls the shots. WWE and all them guys, they call the shots, right? So it's going to be more sports entertainment with UFC and more real combat sports everywhere else. That's what it's going to be. So they're going to have a place, but it's going to be entertainment based. It's like a show, not so much, up the rankings competition. The people who earned it get it, right? That's where the UFC is going, entertainment, and everybody else is building the sport of mixed martial arts, right? Simple as that. Nothing wrong with it. We don't got to hate on it. It is what it is. Dana White's course has ran. He's ran his course. It is what it is, right? You can fight it all you want, but change always happens, right? Look at Blockbuster. Hottest thing on 2 feet until, freaking, what was it called? Redbox. Then after that, Redbox became Netflix. Netflix is taking over, right? It happens. Growth happens, right? You got to let it happen. So we'll see. That's all I got. I just want to shout it out there and get out there what I think is going on with the PFL buyout, with the Bellator buyout from PFL, and how it's going to affect Dana White and the UFC. That's my take on it. It is what it is, fight fans. You know how I do. All right, that's it. This is Coach D doing what I'm doing, calling it like I see it, talking my share of shit. To hear from me again, peace out.